let's kind of pick up where we left off last time. And I'm going to draw the schematics for the gates that we built. Okay, so we started with the AND gate, and we had 5 volts. It's going to be a little blurry until I finish drawing it, so just relax. Okay, so that was our AND gate, and then our OR gate was similar. What was the difference between them? Okay, so what was different about this part? Okay, so let me zoom in a little bit. Oop, damn it, sorry. Okay, so that's what we had last time, right? So the AND gate, what was the idea? Under what circumstances would the output be on? Only when both A and B were on. Otherwise, it would be off, okay? And how did we wire those? Well, we went from the emitter of one transistor directly to the collector of the next one, and so they were one after the other. And the cheesy analogy we used is like 2 doors, one right after the other. They both have to be open for you to get in. Yes? Okay. Now, the truth table for this, okay, is a little grid that we'll make. And A and B could be, each of them could be 0 or could be 1. And we'll use 0 to represent off and 1 to represent on. Okay, so what should I fill into my grid here? Where are the zeros going to go and where are the ones going to go? Where should they go? Well, under what circumstances an AND on? Only when both inputs are on. And so I'll put that there in the 1, 1 spot. Okay, what about all the other combinations? Those should be zeros. Okay, so notice that the gate is on only when both inputs are on. And so we saw that in our circuit where the thing would be on for 1 second and off for 3. Okay, just because we did 1 second per combination. Okay, good with that. Okay, so let's do the same thing for the OR gate. Right? The same 4 combinations are possible, but what about this time? Where should the ones and the zeros go? Okay, 0 if they're both off, and otherwise all 1. Okay, and I think towards the end of class is where we had the OR gates wired up, where it was on for 3 seconds and off for 1. Okay, so we good with that? And we got the circuits into that condition and everything was cool? Yeah, okay. So, give you a second to scribble that down. We're going to make some minor modifications to both of these, okay? And I'll just use a clean sheet for that. So actually, I'll use this sheet. Okay, so I'll give you guys just a second to scribble that down and then we'll move on. Yeah, negation, and we'll add some stuff below it. Yeah. I mean, my handwriting is not the greatest, but it's not that bad. I think that is a G2. Those are my favorite. Yeah. Yep, Pilot G2. Okay. All right. Now with the OR gate, how did we have these wired? What was the door analogy there? Yeah, they were next to each other. They were in parallel. Okay. So the AND gate is wired in series. The OR gate is wired in parallel. And so if it's in parallel, how can you get to the end? Well, you go through one or the other door. Either it doesn't matter. But with an AND gate, you got to go through both of them. Okay. Okay. So we're cool with that. All right. So let me draw a circuit here. Okay. And it'll only have one input. Now, for technical reasons, you see how we have this, and let me actually label the resistors. We had this 1K resistor that we had to add. Okay, for technical reasons, I'm going to actually move it up to here, and then I'll go directly to ground there, and I'm going to move the output to the top above the transistor instead of below it. Okay, so we're going to kind of think about what this circuit would do, and then we can wire it up in just a moment. Okay, and I've maybe given away what it should do because by labeling this with negation. Okay, so under what circumstances is the transistor on, allowing current to flow through it in this bottom diagram? When would that occur? So when is a transistor, an NPN transistor, on? Yeah.
Just when it's connected to power?
Yeah, when A is on, right? So like think of the transistor as like a magic door where if you apply current to the base, the door opens. And if you don't, the door closes. Okay? So under what circumstances is this transistor on? Well, A has to be on, correct? Okay, now, notice I said when is the transistor on? I didn't ask when is the output on, okay, because that's a different question, possibly. Okay, so if the transistor is on, electricity can flow from 5 volts. It's got to go through this little resistor, okay? But if at this point we reach a decision, okay? Now, which way is electricity going to flow? Is it going to go to an output like it has an LED and stuff, or would it rather go directly to ground? It would rather go directly to ground. That path has less resistance than if I put an LED and stuff there. Okay, and electricity always flows that way. It follows the path of least resistance, okay, like water, actually. All right, so for that output, let's make an output here, and let's say that we had a 330 ohm resistor, then we had an LED, and then we went to ground, okay? Which way is it easier to get to ground? Straight through the transistor, or through this resistor and an LED? Which way would be easier? Straight through the transistor, directly to ground. Okay, but when is this transistor allowing current to go through it? Only when A is on. Okay, so if I have here, what states could A be in? On or off, right? So we'll call this our output. Okay, so if A is 0, meaning off, then can current flow from plus 5 volts through the transistor to ground? Yes or no? No, because the transistor's not open. Okay. And so, but can electric current go to ground over that way? Yes. Okay, so what would the output be in this case? If the input A is 0, what's the output? It's actually a 1, right? What about if the input is a 1? The output would be a, okay. So why did I call this thing negation? Because it did the exact opposite of the input. Does that make sense? Okay. So think about what tweaks I made here. Okay, I had that 1K resistor that I have to have for technical reasons, and I've also got the LED stuff, right? But notice where I moved them. I sort of moved both of them before the transistor rather than after the transistor. And that somehow negated how things worked. Okay, so is that okay? Now, and then we'll wire it up in a second. Okay, so what I would do is grab a spare, an empty breadboard, so that you don't have to disconnect all the stuff that you've already made. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the stuff I've already made, but that's okay. Okay, so does the diagram, the idea here make sense? Now we just want to make sure that it works. Yes? Okay. All right, so let me get my breadboard and stuff over here. Okay, so I'm just going to use this short breadboard for this, for right this instant, but it doesn't really matter. It's just, okay. And like before, I'm going to put power down here on the bottom and ground at the very bottom. And then I'm going to put pin 2 on the minus rail and the pin 4 on the plus rail up top. Okay, so that's pretty similar to how we had it before. Okay, I've got my LED. I've got my 10K resistor and my 330 resistor. And then I need my 1K resistor, which is this one. Okay. Okay, so I've got all the pieces I need, I think, yeah. So I've got my, see, that's the 1K, this is the 10K, okay. All right, so I've got my 1K resistor here, my 10K there, my 330 over here, one LED, and one transistor, okay? All right, so let's look at my diagram, which of course I'm conveniently covering up. Okay, and let's get the 1K resistor in first. So that's from power, okay, which would be here. Okay, so that's my 1K resistor. That's this guy here in my diagram, connected to 5 volts, and then I'll do stuff to it. Okay, all right, then I'm going to put the transistor so that its collector is connected to the 1K. Okay, so that is this connection point right there. Resistor straight into there. Okay, what do I need to put on the base of the transistor? My 10K. Okay, and where do I want to connect my 10K to? So the transistor at one end and what on the other? Either pin 2 or pin 4, it doesn't matter. Okay? Okay, so we got that? Okay, so let's just check off what we've got. Do I have my transistor in place? Yes. Do I have my 10K in place? Yes. Do I have my 1K in place? Yes. Do I have the transistor's emitter connected to ground? Not yet. Okay, so let me do that. So that I'll go a wire from here to ground. Okay. All right, so now I have that. And then I just need to do the LED part, okay? So just for cleanliness, let me put my LED over here, kind of out of the way. I'll put the resistor between its short leg and ground, and then the wire, I'm going to, so I've got this in and I've got that in, but then the only thing I need to do is connect this piece, okay? So where am I going to go from that? I'm going to go from the collector of the transistor over to here. Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry, it's all blurry. Hold on. Didn't realize that. Okay, is that better? Okay, so let's make sure, that's still a little blurry. Okay, so let's just make sure we're clear as to everything. So what's down here on this bottom row? The very, very bottom, I've got what? Ground. What's on the row right above it? 5 volts. Okay, what's up here? Pins 2 and 4. Okay, all right. Then what do I have? I've got from plus 5 volts to the collector side of the transistor. I've got my little 1K. Okay, that is this resistor right here. Yeah? Okay, from pin 2 or 4, it doesn't matter which one, I've got my 10K connecting to the base of the transistor. The emitter of the transistor goes directly to ground, and then on the same pin as the collector, I go over to my LED contraption. Okay, so we're good with that? Yeah? Okay, look at the behavior of the LED. Okay, what do we notice here? Okay, what does it seem like it's doing? On for 2 and off for 2, okay? Now the reason is, how did we program the board? We programmed it so that pin 2 would be on for 2 seconds and off for 2 seconds, and pin 4 was also on for 2 and off for 2, but it was on, off. Okay, so are any of y'all's doing on for a second, off for a second, on for a second, off for a second? I can change it. Is y'all's doing that? And it's staying on. Okay, then I'll come look at that. So let me actually make one minor change here. Let me connect this to pin 4 instead of pin 2, and you'll notice it's blinking that way. Okay. Okay. So the reason that that's happening is, let's think about how we programmed pins 2 and 4. Okay, we wanted to program all 4 combinations of being on and off, right? Okay, so what are all 4 configurations of being on and off? Okay, we had pin 2 and pin 4. We had 1, 1, 1, 0. Okay, we had, let me zoom out for a second. And this is really annoying that it's this blurry. Okay, is that better? Yes? Okay, so that's how we programmed it, right? Now, this particular circuit, I'm only either using pin 2 or pin 4, but I'm not using both of them simultaneously. Okay, so what is the opposite of pin 2? And what's the opposite of pin 4? Okay, what do you think opposite means here? So if pin 2 is a 1, what should the opposite of pin 2 be? 0. Okay, and same thing with pin 4, be like this. Okay, so depending on which pin I connected to use as my input, I'm going to see one of 2 different patterns. I'll either see 0, off, on, or I'll see off, on. Just depends on which pin. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so what have we constructed here? We've constructed a NOT gate. It outputs the exact opposite of what's input. Okay, does the idea there make sense? We? No. Okay, so if you have it where it's continually on and not doing one of the two things that I said it should do, raise your hand and I'll come look at it. Okay, let's see what you guys messed up. Okay, so what's missing is this should be connecting the base of the transistor, which is in the middle pin, you had it on the other one, to one of the two pins up here. And it doesn't matter which one for demonstration's sake. So yours is now doing the on for two, off for two pattern.
Wait, so if it's in the middle, wait, what's it called?
The base.
The base. So if it's in the base and then the one on the further side.
The emitter is connected directly to ground. So essentially what happens is if the transistor allows current to flow, it flows through the transistor directly to ground rather than through the light, and the light turns off because the current's actually going through this wire. And if the light is on, the current's going through the orange wire rather than the blue one, right? So it's doing the opposite of the input. Okay, make sense? Okay, does y'all do it? Good? Okay, yours good?
Yeah.
Okay. Is yours good? No? Okay. Okay, so let me look at
I'm missing a 330 volt resistor.
330 ohm. Okay, so there's several issues. You've got the base here of the transistor. This should be connected to one of the pins, which is up here, not to power. Okay, and then you need this resistor to the collector. Okay, that's good. Then you've got the LED to ground. Okay, we need a 330 ohm. Yeah, okay. So a 330 ohm, because otherwise we're going to burn out the LED. Okay, so we'll put that. Okay, so that's the long side. Okay, so we'll go from the LED to ground. Okay, and then we can double check that the LED is correctly wired by going plus 5 volts and just touching it. Okay, so that means it's good. But then we want to go from, so here, the emitter directly to ground, and finally, this wire to connect to there. So we need to go from the base, or sorry, the collector to the LED. And there you go. Okay, so yours is on for, okay, so that actually may be a program thing.
Yeah, it was the preloaded program.
Okay, so that's why it's just doing a different pattern. Okay, so y'all's working? Okay. Okay, now let's take a peek then. You've got your transistor backwards. So remember, the flat side tells you which side is which, right? So flip it 180 degrees. Okay.
It goes collector, base, emitter, and the transmitter, right?
Base, so collector, base, emitter, yes. Okay. So here the issue is that you've got the transistor connected to, so this resistor here is basically, the transistor is always on. So here, let me pull a couple things. Okay. So this is your 1K. You had it on the base. It should have been on the collector. And then this resistor should have been on the base and one of the two pins up there. It doesn't matter which one. Okay. And then we need to connect the emitter to ground and the LED to the base. which is here. Right, so then now you see it's the 1 second on, 1 second off because we're connected to one of the two input pins. If we connected it to the other one instead, we'd see 2 on, 2 off in that order. Okay, and that just depends on which input pattern we were using. Doesn't matter, but yeah. Okay, all right, makes sense? Yeah. Okay, this should be connected to the base, and this should be connected to the collector. So collector and 2 plus 5 volts. And then okay, and then the other issue is, so the LED may be backwards. Yep. Okay, on to, off to. And if we switch this resistor to the other pin, it would do 1 and 1. Okay. Okay. We got it? Is yours good? You got it? Okay. And you also good? Okay. So we're all good. We've got the NOT gate connected. Did y'all's work when you flipped it around? Nope. Okay. Well, then you messed something else up. You all fail. Okay. All right. So, oh, okay. I see. You guys are backwards from how I had it. So, because you've got your pins down here and your power up there, it's fine, but it just means that some of these are in the wrong spot. So let's do, you got your base right. This is your 10K. Or sorry. Okay. So this is here. Okay. You got plus, and that's the other thing. Nope. The orange one is 5 volts. Okay. So you're good there. Okay. Power. Then this should go to one of the 2 pins, and it doesn't matter down there. It'll just change the pattern that we see. Okay. Then we need from the collector of the transistor. There we go. Sometimes these don't like to go in. To ground, which we have up here. Okay. And then we've got the LED, which you had backwards. Or, no, actually. Okay. Okay. And then we need to go from the collector. Come on. Sometimes these break, but there we go. To the positive side of the LED. Okay, and then I think this is the wrong resistance because this should be brighter. So grab a, do you know what these are? Okay, make sure you always put them back so that you don't get them mixed up. So you see how the 330s are physically much smaller? So let's replace this one, and that is this is a 1K. No, this is a 10K. So I'm actually surprised we could see it at all. So you saw how the light, it worked, but it was just really dim. That's because the resistor you had on it was too big. Okay, so now you see it's on for 2, off for 2. It's doing the exact opposite of pin pin 2. Okay, so we had pin 2 being on for 2, off for 2. This one's off for 2, then on for 2, the exact opposite. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so I think you guys all got them. So that's good. Okay. And now what we're going to do is basically combine this idea of inversion with the AND gate. Okay. So let me come back up to my diagram for the AND gate. okay? So what I can do, okay, is if I basically move this 1K and the output up to the top instead of the bottom, okay, then I can make it do the opposite of an AND gate. Okay, and now you could say, well, wait a minute, why don't you just take this output and then run it through what we just created? That would work, but how many transistors would that take? 3. 2 for the AND gate and 1 to negate. Yes? Can I do it with 2? Yes. Okay, so let me come over to a clean sheet here. Let's draw a new schematic, and then we'll wire it up on your another clean breadboard. Okay, so it's going to look a lot like the AND gate. Okay, and that I'll still have 2 transistors. Okay, and like before, what's connecting to the base of each transistor? A 10K, right? 2 pin 2 or 4, whichever one. Okay, and then I'm going to go put my 1K resistor here, and then come over to my resistor, my LED, and ground. Like so. Okay, so you see how we kind of combined the idea of what we did with the inversion by putting the output on the collector side rather than the emitter side. Okay, so that was tweak number 1. And then tweak number 2, though, is so basically what we had before with the NOT gate was as if this transistor weren't there. It just went straight to ground. Okay, so basically what are we adding to the circuit? Instead of going from this transistor directly to ground, we're going through another transistor instead, and then to ground. Okay, so you guys see how like that's the NOT gate, and now it's just got 2 transistors instead of 1. Does that make sense? No, yes. We'll get to that. Okay, so for now, just trust me why we do it, but let's think through the truth to draw the truth table for this thing. Okay, and you'll see why we did that. Okay, so what possibilities are there for A and B? They can both either be 0 or 1, right? And we'll put A there and B there. Okay, so let's suppose that they're both 0. Okay, what does that mean in terms of our circuit? If A is 0, can we get through this transistor? No. If B is 0, can we get through that transistor? Okay, so what's the only path that is connected between plus 5 volts and ground? It has to go through the LED, and so if we call the LED our output, is the output on or off in that situation? On. Okay? All right, take a couple of minutes and think about, talk amongst yourselves, what should the other 3 entries in this table be? So think about it for a second, and then we'll see what you guys get. Okay? Okay, yes. Okay, 0 is short for off and 1 for on. Okay, so you could use true false or off on, like the actual words, or high low. So like when we programmed the thing, we said high versus low, so high voltage, low voltage. They all kind of mean the same thing. 0 is off, is false, is low. And similarly for high.
So how do you know that this is this one's off?
What is on?
Well, off. So, wait. So 0 is right here, right?
Okay. So no. The inputs are here for A or B. So A can either be 0 or 1. B can either be 0 or 1. And then the thing we're going to put in the box is what the output is. So whether the light is on or off. Okay. So if let's say A and B are both 0, can the current flow through then this transistor if A is off? No. Can it flow through that transistor? No. So what's the only path between plus 5 volts and ground? This way, right? It can't go that way. Okay. So that means that is the light on?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a 1. All right. Now, if A is on, so if this transistor allows current through, but this one's closed, can current get through to ground this way? So it has to go this way. So what's there?
On.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So continue with that thought process. Yeah.
So if they're both on, right, and it's going through and gets to ground, is that considered on?
So for on versus off, think about is the light on or off? Okay, so what do you think?
Off,
Because it goes straight to ground, exactly. So that's going to be off. But then here, what's different about on off versus off on? Okay, but if it's off there, so what about if it's on here but off there? Can it get to ground? No, so it should be on. So under what conditions can it make it through both transistors to ground? They both have to be on. And so that's why this is the entry, that the only entry that should be a 0. The rest are 1.
So if that one's on though and it goes through,
but well, so it okay. So, but does it get to ground? If it can get through this, no, because it can't get through that one. So it doesn't really go back. It doesn't go through it in the first place. Is really the better way to think of it, right? But it's sort of like, if there's one open door followed by a closed door, can you get through to the end? Nope, you're going to see that it's closed and go the other way. I mean, like, when we talk about electrons, we almost talk about them as if they're people, but they're not. They're not like, should I go this way or should I go that way? No, they just do, right? So, yeah, the analogy is not perfect, but yeah. Okay, so what did we get for all 3 of the other entries? What do you guys think? Huh? For all of the other ones? Okay, what about if A is off and B is on? Okay, so that should be the pattern. All right, so let's talk about why. Okay, if A is on and B is off, then I have an open door followed by a closed door. Can I get from plus 5 volts directly to ground that way? No. And so what's the only way I can get to ground? Through the light. And if I go through the light, we're going to call that a 1, on. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, similarly, if A is closed and B is open, can I get through that path? No, so I go through the light, and that means on. Okay, so the last one is, why is this far right entry a 0? Yeah, because if both doors are open, think about it. Like, okay, it doesn't really work this way, but I'm a charge carrier. I go through this resistor and I come to this junction. And I can say, I can go this way and go through a 330 ohm resistor and an LED to get to ground. Or I can go straight to ground through this shortcut over here. Which one am I going to take? The shortcut, okay? And so does current go through my LED? No. And therefore, we consider that to be off. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, you see how we kind of think through it? Now, what I want you to notice is, let me shove this over. Okay, I put just next to it here from before the truth table for the AND gate. What do you notice about the 2 truth tables? It's the exact opposite, right? Okay, so if this is an AND that we started with, what should we call this? NAND, okay, for not AND. Okay, so what we have made here is a NAND gate for not AND. Okay, now, could we have basically just taken the AND gate and glued it together with the NOT gate that we made a minute ago? Yeah, that would have worked. Okay, but it would have taken 3 transistors where we were able to do it with just 2. Okay, so does that make sense? Okay, excellent. How do you think I would do a NOR gate? It'd be the opposite of OR. That's what its truth table would look like. But in terms of actually wiring it, what's basically the trick? Where did the 1K and the output go between a regular version and a NOT version? A regular version, they were down there. A NOT version, they were up here. So do we know how to make an OR gate? Yeah. So should we be able to, if we just move the output in the 1K up, turn it into a NOR gate? Theoretically. Guess what one of your assignments is going to be? Theoretically. Yeah. Okay. So does this kind of make sense? Yeah? All right. Now, there are more gates besides NAND, NOR, AND, OR, and NOT. Okay, there were 2 others. We talked last time about the pi example, XOR. Okay, we'll come back to that later. And then if you've got XOR, then you can have the opposite of it, or in XOR. Okay. And there's all 7, the fundamental logic gates. Okay. And I've got a little cheat sheet. I'll post it to Canvas that's got the diagrams for all 7 and a place where you can write their truth tables. Okay. When I make this little table here, it kind of looks like a Punnett square from biology. That we call a truth table. Okay. Yes. Okay. So does that kind of make sense? Okay. So what we're going to start on Monday is, in some sense, we're going to revisit a different way to construct all of these gates. Well, we'll start with the NAND gate. Okay. But using the other major category of transistor. Okay. So what kind of transistors were we using for everything we've done so far? Yeah, they're BJTs, and specifically these are NPN BJTs. So it's a particular subcategory. Okay. And these are current controlled. So if I want to allow current to flow through the transistor, I have to apply a very small current that goes from the base out the emitter, but there's actually current flowing. Okay. The second thing is that in some sense you can think of these transistors as being default off, meaning I have to actually do something to allow current to flow through them. The NPNs, there's a mirror image of them called a PNP that works the exact opposite, where I actually have to do something to turn them off. Okay, so imagine a switch that controls a light or something. It could be defaulted on, it could be defaulted off. NPNs are default off, PNPs are defaulted on. Okay, just sort of the opposite. Okay, okay. The other kind of transistor or big category that we're going to look at are what are called the MOSFETs, metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistor. Right? Okay, say that 5 times fast. No, don't. Okay. Did I already use the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man joke? Yeah, from Family Guy. Okay. Well, anyway. So let me draw the diagrams for these, and we'll talk just briefly about what's different about them, and then we'll actually start wiring with them on Monday. Okay. So the field effect transistors have a similar diagram to okay, so this is an NMOS. Okay, so it's like an N-flavored version. And then there's also PMOS, which has a similar diagram. And I'm sorry, my art skills really suck today. Okay, now, they both have three pins on them, kind of like the BJTs do, but what we call those are different, unfortunately. The middle one is the gate, and that's kind of like the base that we've had so far. And then the other 2, for reasons we'll talk about later, are called the source and the drain, respectively. Okay, and the diagram for them differs slightly. Basically, the P version has a little loop on the gate, and the N version does not. Okay, so these things are switches, right? In the same way that the BJTs are, but how they work from a physics standpoint is completely different. Okay, the BJTs are current controlled. These guys, the field effect transistors, are voltage controlled. Okay, so what's the difference between voltage and current? Okay, not quite. For DC, there's no such thing as frequency. Okay, because the current is just flowing, right? So an analogy for this would be with the water hose. Current is how much water is actually flowing. Voltage is pressure, right? So could you imagine a real low pressure hose versus a real high pressure hose, right? But it's all about the pressure instead of the actual flow, okay? That's not a perfect analogy, but it'll work for right this instant, okay? So from a physics standpoint, they work in a fundamentally different way, okay? Now, the other thing that's sort of brilliant is we could use the NMOSs much the same way that we were using the NPNs, okay? And we could imagine kind of flipping ourselves on our heads and doing everything with the PNP version instead. It'd be kind of everything would work backwards, okay? But what's especially brilliant is actually if we combine them in a really clever way. So every NMOS will have a corresponding PMOS and vice versa. They're always going to come in pairs, and the pairing, the complementary arrangement is brilliant, okay? And this is where we get complementary metal oxide semiconductor, or CMOS for short, okay? Basically, every chip that's in this room, all of the processors that are in all your computers and stuff are fabricated using this complementary method, okay? And there's really, really good physics reasons why that's a good move, okay, which we'll talk about, okay? All right, so that's kind of where we're going. I'll post you guys your next little assignment, and we all have, who's got a group of 3 that would like to join our and make a group of 2 with our lone gunman over there? So his partners dropped the class, and so he's all by his lonesome. Does anyone help a brother out? Why don't you go help a brother out? Okay, so exchange contact info with him, and you are now bucket number 9. Okay, and you can tell these scrubs to, yeah, go throw some eggs at them or something, right? No, go ahead and leave it for right this instant so that you guys can look back at it. Okay, but I will post an assignment for you guys to do some stuff on the breadboards. Okay, and we're all clear. Where do we get the breadboards? Where do we get our buckets? The library, from the circulation desk. Okay, all right. Have a great weekend. Don't throw any eggs at anybody's houses.